Welcome to Catalyze. Catalyze is a program of Mid-America Arts Alliance. Mid-America Arts Alliance, we are the first regional arts organization in the entire country. We were founded in 1972, which is the same year as my own founding. I'll let you all do the math. And we serve the states of Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. But also our artist services program even extends beyond here, and that's really exciting. We have been able to make this commitment with the help of the Windgate Foundation, which I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with, and due to their generosity, we're able to offer these grants to folks in Central Arkansas, as well as this year, adding in, I think, 16 new counties, 15 or 16 new counties along the Delta to really expand the reach of arts funding into those more rural places. I'm a farm kid myself from rural Kansas, so that's very important to me, and I'm glad those populations are not being left behind. For the barking dog, if you will turn down or turn off your audio for just for the duration, I'd sure appreciate it. Thank you so much. As I said before, my name is David Wayne Reed, he, him, his. I am from the lands of the Kansa, Osage, Kickapoo, and Oceti-Sakowin nations. I am the communications manager for the Artist Services team. One cool thing that I love most about the Artist Services department that I work with and for is that we are all practicing artists. We we apply for grants and we get rejected. We apply for grants and sometimes get them for residencies and all that. So I don't want anyone to feel like it's a top-down or gatekeeper kind of situation because we are in the arena as well doing the work. I think I said earlier, I'm a writer, director, and filmmaker. That is what's pictured there is a handsome photo of me, as well as the poster from my second film about the erasure of the tall grass prairie. That's my mom's arm holding up a bouquet of tall grass prairie flowers. And that film is shown all over the country as well as on PBS. That's a little bit about me. And these are my beautiful colleagues, Kyle and Jade, and I will let them introduce themselves. Jade?
Good afternoon, everyone. Jade Osborne. I have a long amount of pronouns, she, her, we, and us. I am a performing artist. I come from a background of movement, and I moved into acrobatics and aerial work later in my career. Happy to be here with you all. Kyle, would you like to join in?
Yeah, thank you, Jade. Sorry, I'm camera off today, everyone. I'm saving you from my haggard face. I've been a little under the weather the last day or so. My name is Kyle Mullins. I'm an Artist Services Program Officer here at Mid-America Arts Alliance, and I live in Tacoma, Washington. And when I am not arts administrating, I am also a dance artist. And I'm happy to have you all here today.
Great. Thank you, Kyle and Jade. And our Director of Artist Services, the newly published Diane Scott. Hi, Diane.
Hi, I'm Diane Scott. My pronouns are she, her, and I live in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm the Director of Artist Services here for all the programs that we have at Mid-America Arts Alliance for individual artists, which includes Catalyze, as well as Artist Inc., Artist Inc. Express, Artist 360, and the Interchange program. I am an author, an arts administrator, and an educator. I do have my new book that literally was just published here right at the very end of 2024. And so I'm excited about that. And I have a long-standing conceptual art practice that I work on as well, even though my background educationally is in theater. We're super happy to have such a great group here today. I'm very excited about adding the counties of the Arkansas Delta to the eligibility for this great Catalyze program.
Thanks, Diane. All right, well, let's get into it. So this is the Catalyze Grant, a program providing grant funding, professional development to individual artists of all disciplines in these counties that you see highlighted in the state of Arkansas. Does everyone see their county in there? Is everybody still eligible? Excellent. All right, very good. Let's move on then. So y'all received $10,000, right? That's part of the grant. It is a $10,000 practice-based grant to advance your artistic career. You might be thinking, what is practice-based? We're going to get to that, but all of our granting programs have moved from project-based to practice-based grants. So what have you been doing? This is to support your practice. You don't have to come in necessarily with a project. I'm going to make this film on this timeline at this budget. You don't have to do this. This is focusing on your practice. Now, my film would be a part of my practice per se, but I want you to start to kind of untangle that a little bit. It is a real paradigm shift for artists that have been applying for grants for a long time to move to this kind of practice-based program. So I just want to start that untangling right now. So you received $10,000. You also receive professional development. We do this really awesome retreat that Kyle and Jade put together that's so awesome to bring all of the artists together to develop, to refine, implement your plans for your artistic practice. And, you know, $10,000 will come and go, but what the seeds you sow at the professional development, I think, are some of the strongest and long lasting of what this program can offer. So those are two parts. The third part is mentoring, and you will be able to select from 50, I think it's actually closer to 75 experienced peer artist facilitators. And these are artist facilitators that are working within this region and beyond to do one-on-ones with. So you could connect with someone who, I think we saw an actor maybe in the mix. You could connect with another actor in another city, or maybe someone who is really good at fundraising and you're at a place where you need to do some fundraising work. You will have kind of a little directory of these artist peer facilitators that you can make contact with and extend your reach beyond maybe where you are. You want to maybe act in another city or get your film in another city. This is a great way to kind of feel out new territories and expand your reach, okay? So those are the three components, kind of the three legs on the stool of the Catalyze program. So we're going to go through eligibility, and I just want everybody to, if any of these preclude you, then this maybe is not the time. Be at least 21 years of age by the application due date. The application due date is on February 18th of 2025. You are a full-time resident of the state of Arkansas, and you have been in one of these counties by that due date for at least 1 year. You are in the counties of Arkansas, Chico, Clay, Cleburne, Conway, Craighead, Crittenden, Cross, Desha, Drew, Faulkner, Garland, Grant, Greene, Hot Spring, Jefferson, Lee, Lanoke, Mississippi, Monroe, Perry, Phillips, Poinsett, Pope, Prairie, Pulaski, Saline, St. Francis, Van Buren, White, and Yell. Is everybody still in the game? All right. Woo, that was a lot. All right, you will retain residency within these 31 county region for the duration of the grant period, and that extends from May 2025 through May of 2026. You create work in any artistic discipline, including but not limited to dance, film, literary, music, theater, and visual art. You have a resume that demonstrates at least 3 years of engagement in your creative practice prior to the application due date of when? February 18th, 2025. Okay, next slide. You will commit to participating in peer-to-peer strategic planning during that grant year. We're going to be having that retreat at the Marriott Hotel in Little Rock on Saturday, June 21st through Sunday, June 22nd. You have to be a part of that. That really is something. So if you're having a hip surgery or a brother's wedding or something happening during that time, this is not your time, okay? You are a U.S. citizen, permanent resident, or have non-resident status and provide a social security number if you are selected for funding. That's so we can pay you. That's just so we can give you the money. And also be in good standing with Mid-America Arts Alliance with no delinquent reports and/or grant documents. Has anyone here already received a grant from Mid-America? Yeah. Okay. Then I think you all are good. You haven't been delinquent. You haven't. So I think you're all up and all good. Okay. Oh, here we are. Yeah, not received a grant of $1,000 or more from any other MAW granting program during its 2025 fiscal year. Okay. You may not have previously received the Catalyze grant. You may not be currently enrolled as a student in either an undergraduate or graduate program, and you may not work with us here at Mid-America or be an immediate family member of one of ours, and I'm sure you would know that already. Okay, that's the eligibility. Is everybody still eligible? Yeah, very good. Let's move on. So I'm going to open this up to you. Why do you all want a grant? Why do you want this grant? Any comments in the chat or anything? I mean, I'll say it. You want money, right? I mean, it's $10,000. I want a grant. That's one reason. Why else might you want a grant? Yeah, money is always good, Tom, for real. It can make changes. Yeah, it opens up for more opportunities. I think, I think so too. Once you start to get a grant, then people are like, oh, this person has reached, a level. And other grants do follow, or you get a grant and it kind of money follows money, right? It makes it more attractive. It's like I've used my grants that I've received in the past to help with a Kickstarter. It's like I received a grant from the Warhol Foundation. Well, other people were like, oh, well, David received this grant. I feel good about contributing to that too. Um, Connection and community. Yeah, the professional development and those connections you make, so good. Oh, Lisa K. Financial, what did you say? Financial cushion for experimentation, right? We get in these ruts where we're producing the same thing or a similar thing because we know that our audience really likes that thing and they will buy that thing, but it doesn't allow us to take risks or to experiment. And I think as all of us as artists know, taking risks and experimenting is where the gold is and where you find new directions and new visions. I love that. And somebody else exclaimed on that. Yeah, good. Good. These are all fantastic. To have freedom to create my art, expand into bigger ideas, bigger work, new equipment, and proper tools. You guys are good. Yes. Those are all fantastic reasons why we all want a grant. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you guys are thinking just beyond money, even though that's critical. Got it. Okay. Next slide. The benefits of grant writing. I'll just say as a writer, I think that just writing it down clears up messy thinking, right? The more we write grants, the more we understand how grant writing works. And once you answer a few questions, generally those questions are the same. And once you come up with those answers, you can kind of further hone them and refine them. And it gets easier as you apply for more grants. How many of y'all have applied for a grant before? Yeah, good amount of you. Good. It gets easier. I won't say that you'll just keep getting grants, after you get that first successful one, but it helps because you get into the mindset of how it works. And you can really take a lot of those answers and shape them and mold them for future opportunities as you move toward other grants. That's a great benefit of it. And it also gets your name in the hopper. I know you can some places like Creative Capital or Guggenheim, you need to apply a few times before you're even considered. At least get your name in the hopper, get your name in the mix. So it's a benefit just to make an introduction of yourself, honestly. Okay, next slide. I think that we get really intimidated by writing a grant. It seems like something that it has to require a certain language or a certain way of speaking, and that can be really intimidating. But I want you all to remember that a grant proposal is just a story. You're just telling the story of who you are, what you want, why you want that. Okay? That's just the critical aspects of a grant proposal. You're just telling a story. Make it easy on yourself. Be clear. you don't feel like you have to use all these 25-cent words or this art school speak. That gets really muddy and mucky. And as someone who's been on a lot of panels, when you're reading through a lot of applications, you can sense the BS in those, and it just gets murky and muddy. Make it streamlined, make it memorable, tell a good, compelling story. Okay. So here's what we're going to ask from you. This is what's included in this Catalyze grant proposal. Your artist biography, your artist statement, your resume or CV, your work samples, critical. Your work samples are critical. A work sample summary, tell us about those work samples. And then we have our narrative questions. And these are just a little bit different from maybe other grants you may be applying for, but boy, your artist bio, your artist statement, resume, samples, work sample summary, you can already have that ready to go for this grant proposal, for any number of other grant proposals, okay? All right, next slide. So let's break it on down. Your bio. Who are you? I'm David Wayne Reed. I'm a writer, director, and filmmaker based in Kansas City, Missouri. I make films that are inspired by time, landscape, and transformation. Okay, my work has been seen at this film festival, and on this stage. That's a little bit about me. That's my bio. A lot of times people ask for like 100-word bio, and it's so much easier to write a 250 or 500-word bio. But generally it's a 100-word bio, which equals out to about one healthy paragraph. Okay. This is about you, your work, what you have done, and it's written in the third person. I feel like you all are a smart bunch and probably have a handle on that. Any questions about bio? Okay. Also, this is a place where you can really control the narrative. It's your bio that you write that will be used in publicity materials, right? So I would urge you all to Google yourself, set up a Google alert for your name, and see what comes up. It should be something that you have written or that you can control, because you can kind of control the SEO, search engine optimization of that with your own words, right? So make sure you've got that somewhere posted so people can grab that, because people will grab that, okay? Again, that's 100-word maximum, about a paragraph, okay? Include your resume or CV. One is not better than the other. You can use either. I think CV is generally more for academic folks. It tends to look like that, but it's just your history. And your resume is a curated selection of relevant information. Okay, we don't need to know that you have a side hustle at at Starbucks or at a landscape company. Just what is relevant to what you're putting forward and what you're proposing. Use terminology that everyone will understand. People might not know what an MAE or a BTI is, or whatever some certain certifications are. Sometimes there are certain special certifications. So spell that out. Let us know, and don't assume that people will know exactly what that is. Use reverse chronological order. Use your most recent entries on top. I was on a panel one time and someone put their work from like 2014 and 2015 up at the top. That was what was highlighted. Further down, when we dug down, they had work that was more timely than that, but it looked like they hadn't been doing work since 2014 or 15. So that might have been a higher honor, but we want to see, this is practice-based. So we want to see that you're working and you've got stuff within these last 3 years that you've been doing, okay? And then finally, use strong but simple design. Avoid those elaborate templates. I know Canva can really spoil us, and I love Canva, but we're not going to think you're more of an artist or you get extra credit because you have this really ornate, elaborate resume template, it just kind of messes up the information. It really detracts from information that you're putting forward. Those nuts and bolts, this is what I've done. This is when I've done it. These are the awards I've won for this. Just be strong and simple. What's that saying? Keep it simple, stupid, right? Okay. Share it as a PDF. Do not upload a Word document. I don't know if you guys have been through this before. I have. Submit a Word document and then it reconfigures and then it kind of bleeds over into another page, or your margins get all kind of janky. Share it as a PDF so you know and you control exactly what it looks like. Use clean, consistent formatting. Be creative and truthful. We're all artists. We live in small worlds and people talk and people know, right? So be creative, but be truthful. For blind folks like myself, use 11 to 12 point typeface. Sans serif is easier to read digitally. I've accumulated quite a long resume because I'm an old man, but and so my impetus is I want to squeeze it down. I'm like, if I go 10 point, I can include all of this on here. Go for another page or start to curate. You don't need to put everything on there. Just what is relevant, what is most useful, okay? And keep it so the visually impaired like myself can see it. All right, next slide. Okay, so artist statement. I feel like artist statement was always really hard for me. Does anybody else feel that? Or yeah, or it feels like it's a bunch of BS words and stuff like that. Yeah. This is really the Mad Libs approach to it. It's these 4 questions. What am I doing? I'm making films. How am I doing it? I'm doing it with a drone and a phone. Why am I doing it? I want to call attention to conservation and to environmental collapse. What influences or inspires me? I'm inspired by the movies like Koyaanisqatsi and Baraka, and narratives of transformation and of time. That's just a little bit, right? You really just have to answer those questions. This is your opportunity to describe what you make and how and why you make it. Now, everybody might make abstract art, but how and why you make it is different. And so really lean into how it's individual for you. I make this because of this or this. And it should give your reviewers insight into your work, your inspiration, and your process. Okay? Is your process kind of unique? How you do it? Here's a place to let us know that. This should be written in the first person. And that should be a 250 word maximum. And 250 word maximum is going to be about 2 to 3 paragraphs. Okay. And I would say just write it all out. Answer all those questions and just be really messy and write it all out. At least you'll get it out. And then you have time to kind of hone it a little bit, shape it, sculpt it. There's a quote by Pascal that I love. And he said, I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have time. Okay. It takes time to kind of hone it down, but like vomit it up, get it all out there, and then spend some time cleaning it up. Okay. All right, work samples. I'd said this is really paramount, and it really is. I was told as a young actor and writer to document my work, and I was like, yeah, whatever. But I'll tell you, when I finally decided to take that advice seriously and got professional documentations, that's when I won a grant from the Warhol Foundation, right? Your highest quality work, that's what you want to put forward. That is putting your best foot forward. You can't imagine the kind of things that I've seen, that we've seen that come through. I've seen people doodle on napkins and take a picture of it and submit it as a work sample. That is not good enough. If the image is fuzzy, it is not competitive. Okay? It's just not. You don't know what you don't know. And being on the other side of the fence, I get to see what is submitted, and it runs the spectrum, right? So high quality, artwork. And you know, our phones are just incredible now. They take better photos than my nice camera oftentimes. You can do that, or you can find someone, a friend who might barter out with you. Hey, John, will you take some pictures of my work for me? If you do, I'll help you with your grant. Something like that. Okay. You'll want to include up to a total of 5 artwork samples. Those can be uploaded as JPEGs, MOV, MP4. We have all the listing on our website on MAA.org/Catalyze. Or for any of us performers out there, or filmmaker, film people, if you've got Vimeo links or YouTube links or SoundCloud or whatnot, you can add those URL links, and those should all be titled with your name, so they are easy to find. Sign your homework, okay? This is a pet peeve of mine, but I don't like to see works that are untitled. Untitled number 6. Name it. Name what it is and put your name on it, okay? You did the work. It deserves your name. Okay. Now, I understand that a lot of us are multidisciplinary, and you can mix and match those 5 work samples. You might have visual, you might have audio, you might have a song, you might have a poem you've done, video, a little film work, or a couple pages of your work in progress fiction. You can mix and match those. You just want work samples that are going to support what you are proposing for this grant. Okay, they should hold that up. Okay, like if you are looking to do work, I want to expand my, I don't know, my textile works. And then you come in with all of these paintings. Well, it doesn't really, it's not it doesn't uphold what you're proposing or presenting. So make sure that these works show the fullness of you while also supporting what you're applying for. Okay. Next slide. The work sample summary. And I think this is a real golden egg that people leave unturned. The work sample summary is a narrative document that describes and provides context for those 5 work samples that you have just submitted. You can include the following for each work sample corresponding to the order of samples that are submitted. Next slide. So 1, it's my artist name. I'm David Wayne Reed. The title of the work, this is my film Land and Flower. My website address, davidwaynereed.com. Medium, it's film. Dimensions, it's film. I completed it in 2023. It has a running time of 12 minutes. I did this during COVID. And this film shifted from being a documentary of talking heads to one without talking heads because I couldn't interview them because of COVID and we were in a pandemic. There's a detail that's really interesting that provides further context that just showing a work sample would not. And then clearly indicate the selections intended for reviewing. So I want you to watch my film for 1 minute, from 1 minute 51 seconds to 2 minutes 51 seconds. Or I want you to read this part of my book that I just published, but I want you to read pages 2 through 5. Okay. And also, you get 1,000 words to articulate all of this. Everywhere else, we're being a little chintzy, you know, giving you 100 words, 250 words. This is 1,000 words to talk about those work samples. I did this when I was here doing this, and this was in response to whatever it was. That gives us a much clearer picture. And I tell you, on these applications, when they're really competitive, you want to find those places where you can find a little edge to give a little bit more information, a little bit more personal information about your art. And this is a great place to do that. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so here's where we really pivot from standard grant. All of that other stuff that I just talked about, that you're going to find that on pretty much every grant you're going to apply for. Okay, these narrative questions that I'm about to go into. These are specific only to the Catalyze grant, but I think good questions to ask yourself that are going to inform you and the answers that you give as you go ahead and maybe propose other applications. Okay, the first question is regarding creative practice evolution. Explain the evolution of your creative practice over the previous few years. What work have you been pursuing? How has that work evolved? Why has it evolved in that way? And have you faced challenges or constraints in making work? Okay. I've been a painter. I've been looking to go from studio to more large scale stuff. It's involved in that way because I want to get the hell out of my house. I don't know. Whatever reason, it's evolved that way. Have you faced challenges or constraints in making that work? Yeah, I need more paint so I can paint, bigger stuff. That's just an example. Again, that's a 250 word maximum. Again, I will say, take each of these questions. What work have you been pursuing? And then set a timer on your phone for like 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, and then just write out, what have I been pursuing? And just keep writing, and you'll be surprised what comes out. And then when that timer ends, move on to the next question. How has that work evolved? Repeat. You answer these 3 questions, that's going to take you 30 minutes. And then you've got the basic information, and then you can start to hone it down into 250 words. These applications do not have to take 40 hours, 50 hours of your time. You can really work smart on these by doing it maybe that way. Okay? That's the first question. The second question is the future of your creative practice. We're artists, we're dreamers, we're visionaries. This is the time to put on your dreamer and visionary hat. Think about what you want your work to look like, what you want to feel like in 5 years. Where do you want to be? Do you want to be a published author like Diane in 5 years? Do you want to be out on a circuit reading from your work? Yeah. And then how do you determine and measure success within your practice? Well, I published a book, so I feel successful in that. But, maybe I want to sell 100 copies, or I want to have 5 live readings in 5 different states. That's going to make me feel successful. You get determined to determine that, right? But here is the place to articulate that. Where do you want to be in 5 years? And how do you measure your success within your practice? Okay. We do not ask for a budget. That's the good news. But we do ask how you're going to use the funds. How do you want to use these funds to further your artistic practice? And I tell you what, you can be really open about this. We've had a recipient before who was homeless, did not have a place to practice their art or to be in. They were able to use funds to cover their bases so they could continue their artistic practice. Perhaps you need someone to take care of your pets or your child or your husband or your wife for a month while you go take a residency, an artist residency somewhere. That's fine. That's fine. Maybe you just want to buy more paint. That's totally fine too. But just let us know how you intend to use these funds for your practice. Okay. Professional development. We want to know that you want to be a part of the professional development program, that you want to learn alongside a small group of your peers, and you want to access one-on-one mentoring sessions, and you want to build a network of other artists. We want to know what strengths will you bring to share with your peers? How will participating in this retreat with your peers help you at this point? A few years ago, we had someone, it wasn't this grant program, but it was another one. And I had said to this person, just as I'm saying to you now, that this is a part of it. Well, they got to the retreat and in the morning, and by noon they said, this is not for us. I don't want to be a part of this. And okay, we're not gonna hold you, but that kept someone else away from that opportunity, from being a part of that retreat weekend. So if being a part of a small group of your peers and being, accessing one-on-one mentorship and spending a fun weekend at the Marriott in Little Rock sounds like it sucks, then do us a favor and do not apply, right? Okay. Because that's really, I think, the gold of this. I think it's one of the best parts, but I understand that that's not for everyone. But be honest with yourself and be honest with us that that is not for you. Okay. Next slide. So how do we review this? It is different. Practice-based is different than project-based, and we're going to get into that here in a few slides. But how we review you on your artistry, first and foremost. Selected artists will demonstrate artistic excellence as broadly defined by practitioners and norms in their discipline and show a deep commitment to their work. Selected artists will have an active creative practice for a minimum of 3 years and show motivation to continue and further evolve your artistry. And how do you show your artistry? You show your artistry in those work samples, right? Put your best work forward. Next up. Program readiness. This kind of goes back to that last narrative question I was talking about. Do you have the desire to advance your career and to deepen your practice while engaging in this process around your practice, as well as sharing your work and your process with this other network of artists in this pure learning environment? Do you have that desire? Okay. Are you showing that desire? Are you writing about that desire? Let us know that that is what you want and how it can be helpful to you. I want to connect with other artists. I feel like I'm in a silo and I'm alone, and I want to get to know other people of other disciplines and how that might inform my own practice, right? Okay. And then the third of three review criteria is the impact of funding on your practice. You will clearly identify the ways in which these funds will impact your career and creative process. These identified impacts should relate to those other questions of challenges and desired futures. Where do I want to be in 5 years? What have I been up against? How have I evolved in the last few years? Your funding is going to be tied to that. Okay. So clearly identify that and think about that. We had an artist, where is she? She's over in Fort Smith. And she received a grant from one of our other programs, and she she took her money to buy a machine that helps her sculpt differently. Like she pours her clay into this machine, feeds it a design, and it produces what she has designed. And it has been a game changer for the kind of work she can create, for the time it takes to create her work. That was a really successful application in showing how this funding would really transform her practice. That's only one example. Her name's Stephanie Payton in Fort Smith. Great work. Okay. Next. So how do we review? How do we go about this? I think this is really cool. So we only hire artists and arts professionals to serve as panelists. We do not hire bankers' wives or people who have the money, who might have a little dalliance in arts. We want people who are in the game. And we also put panelists to like-minded artists. We're not going to assign visual artists to adjudicate literary submissions or literary artists to adjudicate sculpture, right? Or dance. That's not how it's going to work here. These panelists work independently and they evaluate each application using the review criteria that I mentioned just above this. The panelists are required to comment on each application relative to the review criteria. So it's not just like, I don't like them just because. They have to say so. Okay. And then I think this is so beneficial. All applicants will have the opportunity to request the panelist feedback. Ask for the feedback. You want to know what you're doing right, maybe what you're doing wrong, but mostly it's just, what are you doing right? And so you can maximize that and about that. Take the feedback, ask for the feedback every time. Okay. So I already said that they will evaluate each application using the review criteria. We pay the panelists to review our implicit bias documents and video, read our equity and diversity statement and MA's strategic plan and values, and affirm this review prior to the beginning of the panel process. So we really do the work to foreground and inform the panelists before they go into the process to make this as equitable and fair for every applicant, okay? So during this review process, the panelists carefully consider the review criteria and select a statement for each application. This is what they'll say. I recommend this application in advance. I'm unsure, but I'm inclined to recommend, or I'm unsure, but am inclined to recommend that this does not advance, or I do not recommend that this application advances in the selection process. That's how they'll vote. It's not like I give you a 10, I give you a 1, or you get a 7, you get a 3. This is how it's adjudicated. Next slide. So then the applications with the highest degree of consensus will then enter a lottery process. So all of these panelists have said, yes, I recommend that Tom, you move forward. Okay, so Tom, you move into the lottery process, and as well as all these other folks who have reached the consensus, and then to do a blind eye, then 25 grantees will be drawn to represent the balanced cohort, including diversity of gender, age, ethnicity, geography, and artistic discipline. Okay. So the applications are open now. I don't know. Has anyone already started their application? I can't see everybody, but good for you if you have. Those opened on December 9th, and those are open through, again, February 18th. I see a hand up. We're going to get to you here in a hot minute. Applications are due February 18th. In March, that's when the application review and panel adjudication will occur. In mid-April, we will let the applicants know. Yay! And then in June, we will formally announce the awards. And then June 21st and 22nd will be the retreat weekend at the Marriott in Little Rock. And that's when y'all get your money. Exciting stuff. So those are key dates. Next slide. So pro tips. Those narrative questions that I was talking about earlier, put those over in a Word document. Do not ever compose your answers within the actual application. I've done that before, and you know what happens is you forget to save, and then you lose that genius thing that you just wrote. It sounded so good, and then it's lost, right? Do it all over in another Word doc or Google Doc, and then once you feel really good and shiny and polished about that, then copy and paste that into the online application but form. Do not compose in the form, please. Okay, I know. I've learned the hard way. It's tough stuff. The first thing I would do is get your work samples together. Figure out what those are. What are your work samples, and wrangle them up, lasso those together, and make sure and upload them. Get those uploaded, because here's what's going to happen. You're going to wait until the last minute. I know this because I'm like you. Wait till the last minute, last day, and then you go to upload it, and then it's too big, or it doesn't fit, or, Murphy's Law. It's just like technology mishaps at the 11th hour. It's always how it happens, right? So do that at the very top. You're going to save yourself a lot of trouble, okay? Verify that all URLs are accessible to the public. Hey, listen, I just did this recently. I got a residency, and I'm surprised that I ended up getting it because I sent them a URL to a Vimeo link that I had listed as private. They reached out to me and they let me know that it was private, and could I change it to public? I did, and I could have, and I know better. But when you're in a rush and you're doing those things, that kind of stuff happens. So make sure that those URLs are accessible to the public, or that you've included the password so I can access that Vimeo video or whatever it is, okay? And then as you're working in the application form, save your changes frequently. Just hit that Control S many times. Make it make it a habit, okay? 'Cause then you'll lose it, and then where is it? Where do you go? Okay. Next slide. Okay. So we talked about this at the beginning. Practice-based grants versus project-based grants. This is a real paradigm shift to the way things have traditionally been done. I'm going to take a breather and take a drink, but I'd like to pass this off to my colleague Diane, as well as Kyle and Jade, to maybe speak a little bit on the differences between practice-based and project-based grants. Diane, would you like to lead that?
Sure.
Thank you.
So, and actually maybe we could pull the slides down so that we could see everybody too, in case they have questions. Hi, everybody. So, practice-based grants mean that you can use that money. I mean, it's kind of a fancy word for unrestricted. You can use the money for what you need to use it for, right? Like if you need a piece of equipment, if you need time and you need to get childcare so that you have time, if you need transportation, if you just need to have, sometimes I call it ability to say no money, right? So you just have some money in the bank so you can say, no, I'm not doing that project that I'm just doing for money so that I have time to make my work. It can be for anything. There are no restrictions on that, but it makes grant applications a little bit more difficult. So most of you are probably familiar with applying for grants for projects, right? And in that case, you come up with a project and you describe the project and you have a timeline and you create a budget and all this stuff. And a good percentage of the decision making about who's getting grants is kind of based on the most exciting projects, right? Like the most well-defined and exciting projects. And so all grant applications are two parts, right? They are past and they are present. And in the historic project-based way, right? Most of it is based, I'm sorry, it's past versus future. It's mostly based on the future. Like, what are you going to do in the future? And that's about 75% of the consideration. And then 25% is what have you done in the past? But practice-based grants is really just the opposite. It's about 75% on what have you already done, and then 25% on what you say you're going to do in the future. And so it makes that documentation and that talking about your current practice and what you have done a whole bunch more important. Does that make sense? And so it does change how panelists are looking at your work and what they're spending time with. And I know, so we've changed all of our granting programs at Mid-America for artists, for individual artists out of the artist service division to practice-based grants. And we've learned a lot of things about those differences during that time period. Jay, do you want to share some of your thoughts on watching this occur as well?
Sure. And actually, it's just, there was a thought that we discussed in the past, which is that if you think about the practice-based being where the project-based grants leave off, so you've already completed your work, you've already done the project, the practice-based really picks up at that point because you already have this work done. We're talking about having work in the mid-career. It's very difficult to have a lot of work that rises to the top of these applications because if you only have a little, if you only have one or two pieces because you're very new, sometimes that's not able to get you up to the consideration where there's 4 or 5 work samples that are submitted that are from people who have been practicing for 5 or 10 or 25 years. I don't know how long you've been going, David. I hope I didn't call you out there. But so I just think about practice-based really picks up after the projects have been completed.
That's excellent. Excellent. Diane, you were about to say something. 30 years here. So yeah, thanks. Call me out, Jade.
And I wondered if Kyle had some thoughts that he wanted to share as well.
You're catching me mid cough. If you don't mind.
Perfect. Okay.
You know, it might not be a bad time to kind of open this up and see. I see a lot of questions going in the chat, and see if people have some specific questions, because we're certainly happy to answer those. One thing while people are thinking about that, and feel free to just raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask a question here. You know, one of the things, there's some people talking about the lottery process and how that works and how you move up. We have a very rigorous process that is biased towards making the largest number of people eligible to be in the lottery round as possible, right? Like our bias is to get you into the lottery round. And so it's a very, very generous process. I can't give you really specific parameters on where those cutoffs are, because it is contingent upon the particular group and the particular group of panelists. Does that make sense to people? But once you are in the lottery round, it is genuinely up to the universe as to whether or not you get one of the grants. And so last year we had almost 300 applications, and approximately 100 people made it into the lottery round. And we'd be thrilled if all 300 people made it into the lottery round. Does that make sense?
Kyle, you said something in the chat too about a third generally make it into the lottery, and I will say it really usually breaks down into thirds. There are a third of those applying that should get a grant. There are a third of those that are fine, and then there are a third of the applications that are generally non-competitive. That's generally how it breaks down in what I've seen.
And what I will say is that I think everybody should get a grant, and I wish there was enough money out there in the world for us to have that. But of course, the money resources are always limited. And so there has to be some sort of cutoffs and some sort of parameters for all these things. But much to our, you know, it's the Windgate Foundation that is funding this program in Central Arkansas and the Arkansas Delta. And so we have had 2 previous cohorts, and we have 2 more cohorts upcoming, this one, and we are guaranteed to have another one in 2026. So this isn't your last opportunity. They will have distributed $1 million directly into the pockets of Central Arkansas and Delta Arkansas artists, which is kind of an amazing thing. I will say that we work across a broad region here of 6 states, and everybody's very jealous of the resources that you all have available through that generous philanthropy.
I want to call attention to Layla's question over in the chat. How many pictures of each piece is required? Kyle said you may submit up to 5 work samples. So each work sample is a title. So I would not submit 5 different perspectives of the same artwork as your 5 samples. You know, perhaps it's like if you want to show the broader view of this one work, we'll call it sunshine. Okay, so you could include an image of sunshine, and then maybe you break down a smaller image to show detail. Like if it's a sculptural something or whatnot, you want to show a detail. I would include that on the same work sample. When you only have 5 work samples, I would not waste that on doing 3 of the same work. I would say 5 different works.
So
Really,
5.
you want to show the fullness of what you have to offer. Yeah.
Okay. So 5 individual pictures of 5 separate samples. Correct.
5 separate artworks. So if you have, does that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
I just wanted to
That's
make
a great
sure.
question.
And I just
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Jade, I just wanted to add something to this, which is that if you have a group of work that is considered one work, so say you have 5 pieces or you have a triptych, and these are visual arts things. This doesn't apply usually to performing or maybe this might apply to poems, where you have multiple works that are one thing. As long as it's not burdensome, you may submit, multiple pieces as one submission. So what I mean is if you have a triptych, 3 pieces that go together, tell the one story, then that makes sense to submit that as one piece. Or if you have, 3 sonnets that work together as one piece, then that would make sense. But I think another thing I just wanted to mention, if keeping in mind what the panelists are going to be reviewing, they're reviewing many different pieces of art. And so David's mentioned like keeping things very simple and straightforward. So keeping the language really clear and then keeping the work samples really clear and straightforward is really helpful for the panelists to see where you're coming from, to really hear your voice or to pull your voice and your story from your application.
That's really good advice. And I have to say, there's not a one right answer to all of this, right? Because it kind of depends on what you're doing and how your work operates specifically. And so really, really encourage you to have other people, and they don't have to be artists, take a look at your application and the pieces that you're choosing, or the images or the files that you're choosing to submit as work samples, and say, does this make sense to me? What kind of questions do I have? Do I understand what you're doing? Does this represent me in the best possible way? I will say that, it used to be, so I started this work 16 years ago, and we would ask artists, what is your discipline? And they'd say, I am a painter, I am a sculptor, I am a contemporary dancer. Like, they were very specific and they were pretty much discipline bound. And I know that that is actually not the case for how lots of you are working today, that you're working in very interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary ways. So David himself is, a writer, an actor, a filmmaker, all of these different things. But with 5 work samples, it's oftentimes pretty confusing for panelists. If David, for example, would submit a piece of written work that was wholly different than a piece of film work, that was wholly different than a piece of acting work that he'd done, that it makes it really complicated sometimes for the panelists to understand. And so it is best to pick a lane and go with that lane. Does that make sense to people?
Yeah, the work samples that support what you're proposing right now. It wouldn't matter if I'm applying for a film, it's not going to matter my appearance in a rap video that I did. That's not upholding what I'm proposing, right? Yeah.
So Virginia has an interesting questions here. And so see, all the answers are so specific, contingent upon what you're doing, because you're all doing so many different things. What about documentation of a play in which I wrote the script, composed the music, directed the play, right? Like, that's really different streams of work. So you were producing the whole thing. I could envision, based on what you were saying, where you did submit a couple pages of the play potentially. You could submit a music sample, and then if you have it, a video sample of the work together, conceivably. But really think about what helps tell the story and clarify your work in the most meaningful way to people who are only going to be able to see a portion of this. And panelists are going to spend probably 15 minutes or so with your application. Online in a little time. So, the point taken about, make sure that for files and things that you're uploading, that you don't make it an 8-point typeface, because it's hard to read. What other questions do people have?
I'm reading one. Connor just asked to clarify the same question. If I have a series that includes 12 pieces of art, would it be best to include the best 5 from that series, or would I use 1 from that series and it just left me. And use the other different series of works for the other 4 entries? Again, I think there's wiggle room around that, but I'm inclined 1 title or 1 word.